If geothermal gets to the capacity that it could reach, are we going to see the death of oil and gas?
As we continue to drive down costs, I think there is the strong possibility that we become the number one opportunity to power the world. Right now, we have 500 plus megawatts actually contracted. At those megawatts, we can power Houston. You can power with Woodlands. And so you're talking wide scale powering from just like geothermal assets. At our project commercial pilot, right? Those megawatts, talking hundreds of homes. We believe we have a multi-gigawatt pipeline. I think I've always felt that I could be a leader, but when someone else sees it in you, it just gives you additional confidence to do that thing.
What would you say has been the toughest leadership role that you had, like throughout your career?
Kazakhstan role would be one of the top, but I'm actually going to say when I was a maintenance supervisor. And so at that point, I was doing like 1,000 miles a week, probably in a vehicle. That was a physically challenging role. And so I'm dealing with operations staff, individuals that have been doing this job for 20 plus years. And here is a young kid coming in. If you are someone who is passionate about changing the world, if you are someone who likes going fast, likes working in collaborative functions, figuring things out and making things happen, then Fervo is definitely the place for you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Custom Journeys podcast. My name is Andrew Baines. Super excited to be joined today by Quinn Woodard. He is the Senior Director of Power Generation and Surface Facilities at Fervo Energy, which is a geothermal company startup. They have projects in Utah, Nevada. Y'all got anything in Houston right now?
No active projects in Texas, no.
No, okay, but headquartered here, right?
Correct, that's correct.
All right, good stuff. So the other great thing about Quinn, aside from being an engineer, he's also an author. He has 2 different books, as you can see here, Like Me and Like Me Leaders. So we're going to also talk about, his journey to becoming a author, what all went into that, and also your career journey. I mean, you worked at Chevron, worked at Fervo. You've worked all over the world, literally, Australia and many other places I want to talk about as well. But thanks for coming on the show. How you doing, Quinn?
Doing great. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, for sure. So, man, I like to start with, like, where people are at currently. You got a title. It's not a tongue twister or anything. It is a mouthful. Senior Director of Power Generation and Surface Facilities. What can you explain what that is for people who may not be familiar with it?
Yeah, so if you just focus on the latter part, Surface Facilities, that is my scope of work. So underneath me, I have the engineering technical function for everything on the top side. And then I also have the project delivery function, which also includes project engineers, construction, as well as project controls.
Okay, so you say everything on the top side. We're talking about geothermal. So let's take a step back. So everybody may not be familiar with geothermal. I did like some YouTube searching. I saw, which country? Iceland, Greenland? One of these countries, like, they are ahead of the game when it comes to like geothermal. But for people who aren't familiar with it, can you kind of explain what geothermal is?
Yeah, sure. So there's 2 variations of geothermal. What we do, we classify as next generation geothermal. When you speak about the resources that you saw are in Iceland, that's traditional hydrothermal systems. That's the ability to identify a resource that's currently in play, poke a hole and produce it. And what you get is what you get, meaning the temperature, the flow rates. And from there, you design your plant characteristics and you produce power. Now, what Fervo does is we're leveraging various techniques similar to that of oil and gas, what you see in the Permian Basin, where you drill horizontal wells, you're stimulating those wells, you're creating your own reservoir, and then you're producing those wells. And what we do is we actually specify the plant conditions first because we know a lot about the subsurface.
Okay, good stuff. So I make sure people understand. So, like, for geothermal, you have the ground, you poke a hole in the ground, drill down to the bottom. What's going on, like, underneath the Earth's surface? The Earth is pretty much at like a steady state temperature, right? Like 50 degrees or what is it?
It's a lot hotter in various areas, right?
Okay.
And so when you mention where our projects are, right, when you speak about the geographic location, most of our holdings are on the western side of the U.S.
Yeah.
Right. In our active project in Utah, we already know a lot about it. A lot of that is due to the Forge project that's out there, where they have actually drilled wells, they produce wells, and that allows us to understand more about the reservoir that's there. What we've seen in the wells that we've drilled, we see temperatures targeting around 400 degrees.
Oh, wow.
And again, based on the technology, the deeper we drill, typically that increases the temperature.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you drill a hole, you have a well, let's say it's 400 degrees. What happens after that? Like, are you pumping fluid down to, like, heat it up to 400 degrees and then bringing it back up? And then, like, what do you do after that?
Well, so actually, yeah, that's correct, right? And so next gen geothermal, we actually do inject high pressure, high flow water through the injector well, and it's a horizontal, right? So when I say horizontal, literally we are drilling down and then we drill horizontally across.
Okay.
And so you actually have a producer on the other side of that where they intercept. And based on those fractures, those patterns, you allow the fluid temperature to build. And once you have enough pressure, you actually flow the producer back to the facility.
Okay, gotcha. And then, so what's like the plan with all this, like, hot water, like, energy that y'all are generating? Like, what's the plan for it? Like,
Right.
where is the demand at the most currently?
Well, I say everywhere, right? I mean, you look at the infrastructure here in Texas, right? There's opportunities there. But a lot of our projects, we have committed power purchase agreements, and the off-takers are actually in California. Due to their legislation, they've identified a need for clean 24/7 power, and that's why we're producing and developing these projects to send power to California.
Okay. And then, so, like, even in California specifically, are they looking for, like, data centers? 'Cause I know that's a big demand. Everybody talks about AI, but obviously needs, like, servers and supercomputers to do all that. Like, have you guys even identified, like, industry-specific, like, applications where this geothermal energy is going to be most in demand?
Definitely, but I think if you simplify the power off-takers, we're agnostic to that.
Yeah.
Right. But it does drive our ability to meet that demand. A lot of that we do see with data center development, AI. If you revisit our commercial pilot that we did in Nevada, Project Red, 3.5 megawatt facility, that was a power purchase agreement with Google.
Okay.
Right? So they advertise it as well, feeling their need for power for data center development. And so, yeah, that opportunity is definitely there.
Okay, good stuff. And then, so backing up a little bit, like, so I've been seeing in my research, I saw a few different geothermal companies. Like, the secret sauce or the novelty for you guys is the ability to drill horizontally. Is that correct?
Correct. A lot of our IP is subsurface focused. Correct.
Okay, gotcha. All right, cool, man. And then, so Nevada, Utah, those are like where the drilling sites are at. Is there anything like in the works in Texas? Because I know, like, with Texas, you got like Eagle Ford Shell, you got a lot of like oil and gas related projects, even offshore. But I'm just curious, like, are there any plans to kind of do anything in Texas, or does I'm assuming there's a lot of analysis that goes into like where y'all pick your location, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, in any traditional project execution phase, right, the first piece is lease acquisition and prospecting and identifying the resource, and then you have to determine whether or not you have proper interconnection. Apologies. And so when I say our projects in Utah, that's for a very specific reason, because we know a lot about that reservoir. We understand the constraints. We also have the interconnection available. The next project is in Nevada. That's 115 megawatt offtake. Again, that one's an opportunity with NV Energy as well as Google. Right now, the focus is not Texas, although there's many opportunities there. Our technology, right, we do target low temp resource temperatures, right?
Okay.
And low temp for ORC, organic Rankine cycle, and I'm sure we'll get into that a bit. It allows us to still produce, still have efficiency gain at the power plant level, and still produce and generate power.
Okay, man. You talking about Rankine cycle? Now you started talking about language with this whole mechanical engineering, thermodynamics, and you're an electrical engineer by trade. So
yeah,
you learned quite a bit then, man. If you got, and we'll get into it. Like your job title, like I told you off camera, like I felt like naturally a mechanical engineer or somebody would be the one overseeing like facilities, but you're a double E, and it's like, but you making it work. You obviously qualify. You're highly successful at it. But I'm just kind of nudging you, like elbowing, ribbing you right now. But we'll get into it. But no. So one more like point of clarification, like the reservoir. What is in the reservoir? Is it just like well water? Is it like oil? Like when you say reservoir? Like what do you mean in terms of fluid?
So when we say organic Rankine cycle, right? We are producing hot water.
Okay,
that's all we're doing. Even when we look at it from a TDS component, total dissolved solids, the chemistry of it, we consider it 99% water.
Gotcha.
And so we are injecting the water. Again, there's a time period where we allow it to sweep the reservoir and then flow back. That water then goes to the facility, goes through a heat exchanger, going back to thermodynamics, right?
Yep.
And the brine is not actually exposed to your turbine. We have a working fluid. The working fluid is what's being flashed off to the turbine to actually generate power, and then the cycle's condensed and re-injected, right? So it's a complete closed loop system.
Okay, and the working fluid is water also? Or
No. So you typically pick a hydrocarbon with a lower boiling point. In this case, typical for EGS or binary plants is like an isobutane, isopentane, something of that nature.
Okay, good stuff, man. No, this is cool. I feel like I would make my thermo professor proud, like being able to remember and recall it. I haven't done anything thermal related since college, so I mean, I didn't go the oil and gas route like most Houston engineers, but it's still there. The knowledge is still there. But good stuff, man. One other question, like typically when you're analyzing like these different potential sites, like how much or how long does it take before you're able to determine, okay, hey, yeah, Utah is the right place or Nevada is the right place? When you mention like you know these wells pretty well, like no pun intended, but like how long does that process kind of take?
Well, the company's been around for a while, right? And so if you look at where our founders, Tim Latimer, CEO, and then our co-founder, Dr. Jack Norbeck, CTO, they started this when they were in grad school together. They took the initial seed money to start acquiring leases, and they used a lot of public available information. When you look at appraisal wells or any temperature observation wells, that information's readily available. When we talk about the Forge project, that's a government funded initiative, and that data is public, and so you can have some idea about the reservoir, and then from there you do want to do some level of appraisal. Let's confirm what we think we know. That takes a period of time. Obviously capital is important during that scenario, and then you want to prove or confirm the wells which is actually flowing it, and then that's typically when I step into the process, because now I know more about what's coming out of the ground, and then I can do specification. Now that's probably a traditional execution method. As I mentioned, we do things a little different. We know about this reservoir. We know the temperature. We can control the amount of flow that's happening based on our technique, right? So we are injecting. If I throttle or modify the pressure or flow at the injector, that's going to have an effect on the producer or what's coming on the other side.
Okay, and then what's typically like the lifetime of this, like these wells? Like, let's say you drill one today. Let's just say you snap your fingers, things are up and running, and you're producing energy out of it. Like, does this energy ever run out, or like, what's like the lifetime of that?
That's the cool part about it, right? It's geothermal, right? They typically have an extended life. When people talk about the asset of geothermal, there is some decline associated with it, right? But based on our techniques, based on our ability to drill these wells in record-setting times, the opportunity to drill another well is right there. And we can do that just as quick, because when I look at it from a power plant design perspective, I'm only looking at the commingled fluid temperature at the inlet of the facility. And so if I do see some decline, it goes back to reservoir management, which is really more of a production ops function, where you try to control and manage those things either from a base operations perspective, or you're adding additional production, which is what I mentioned with our ability to drill new wells, to keep that temperature at an appropriate level so that the plant still performs.
Gotcha. And when you're drilling these new wells, are you just drilling further horizontally, or is that kind of...
That's also a possibility, right? At our tech day, we talked about our strategy, right? And a lot of the drivers associated with multi-well pads.
Yeah.
If you look at, again, traditional geothermal systems, the wells are scattered throughout the field. They are focused and targeted where the resource is. That's where you have to go. For us, again, we're looking at the temperature gradient. So we actually have 8 wells per pad. And so, they're relatively close as far as the spacing is concerned. And again, that has trade-offs with, reducing costs on the pipeline system, reducing costs on the electrical system. So a lot of benefits there.
Okay. And then I'm going to try to pin you down to a number in talking about lifetime. I know you said extended, just so people can kind of see, like, you have a number in mind.
Yeah,
what is
so
that?
when I look at developing a plant specification, I assume 30-plus years, right?
Okay.
And a lot of that is associated with the, as I call it, the topside equipment, right? And so there's things you can do to extend the life of equipment. You have your basic maintenance. You have your extending life maintenance, whether you're doing an overhaul on a turbine, cleaning cycles on your heat exchangers. Again, with our turbine not being exposed to the actual brine, right? You probably wouldn't target a overhaul for like 10 years or so, and then you want to use condition-based monitoring to drive your schedule going forward. But you can say, we look at about 30 years or so.
Okay. And then you have a background from Chevron. We'll talk about that in a minute. But how does that 30 years compare to like the typical lifetime of a well, like from an oil and gas perspective?
Well, I guess when I say 30, I mean the entire asset as a whole.
Okay.
The techniques are still very similar. If a well is not producing, you still will drill another one, and you move into a scenario which we classify as drill to fill.
Okay.
Right. And so you would abandon that well and then look for another opportunity to produce and keep your facilities utilized. Mm-hmm. Right. And so the facility side, you still can consider a 30-year life. The wells, I think that would just vary depending on the asset. As you know, some wells in the Permian do have a higher decline in some instances, but they do produce really large as soon as you open the tap. So that's a key benefit.
Okay, good stuff. And so you, as the power generation, senior director of power generation and surface facilities, like you oversee that entire geothermal process we just talked about, or everything topside? Meaning, okay, everything topside.
So my point of handoff, right? So we have a VP of operations which manages the DNC function as well as well pad facility scope.
Yeah.
And so we pass off at a flange basically, and then my role, they have facilities engineers as well. I do some mentoring and guiding, and then our technical teams also support as well as our execution teams. And so, but from a organization standpoint, the VP of Ops is my counterpart.
Okay, good, man. How long you been doing this for, man?
This current role?
Yeah,
it's 2-year anniversary was September. Yeah.
Okay.
It's flown by.
Man, no, I mean, you talking this stuff at a rate like you've been doing it 20 years. I mean, I know you have engineering experience prior to this, but like I could tell you, like you on your P's and Q's and you know the stuff inside out, forwards and backwards. So
I appreciate that. Yeah,
that's cool, man. All right, so cool, man. Hey, like I didn't plan on going on that like rapid fire like back and forth on geothermal, but I was really curious. So appreciate the breakdown, but man, so you are. We talked about your current role a little bit right now, but obviously this wasn't the beginning point. I mentioned Chevron, and then you had beginnings even before that. Just to kind of hit on like some of the key positions you've had previously before this.
Yeah. Well, not many, I'll say. I've had several positions, but I haven't changed the hat.
Yeah.
Right. When I was in university, first summer I did undergraduate research, and that was one of the benefits of. I went to the University of Tulsa, and they allow undergraduates to actually do research, which typically is reserved for graduate level studies. And so, my background is in electrical engineering. I did not specialize. If anything, it would probably be robotics emphasis because I was kind of fascinated by that, and I supported a lot of programs like FIRST Robotics. But I did research on autonomous robotics, autonomous game playing robotics, and so that was my first exposure. And then from there, I moved to industry, did 2 consecutive internships with Chevron, both focused on power engineering design. And then I did receive an offer, a full-time offer, and I moved out to California and immediately went to the field, placed in the field, which is where you learn the most, right? You have the most senior individuals out there. You actually get to see it. You get the chance to see the theoretical transfer to practical, and you just learn a lot. And I've done a lot of roles in California with Chevron. Had the opportunity to then relocate to Houston. I did major capital project work, embedded in the EPC for the project in Australia, as you mentioned, LNG project. And at that time, I was still focused on electrical. And then moved back to California, did some work around cogeneration plants, and that's where I had more exposure on the power plant side. Became a maintenance supervisor, moved back to Houston, became an operations advisor, and this is where my lens was broadened a bit because I wasn't just focused on engineering, but you also have the subsurface piece, you have the HSE piece, you have the digital transformation piece, you have the opportunity to kind of learn that influencing skill and have some high exposure, and then that translated into my final role with Chevron, rotating out of Kazakhstan, supporting our base operations as a reliability supervisor as well, and then also preparing for the transition or handoff for one of the largest projects in the world.
Man, no, that's impressive. That's a lot. And I know you're from St. Louis, Missouri, right, originally?
Yes, sir. Yep.
So St. Louis, Tulsa, California, Houston, Australia, Kazakhstan.
Yeah, well, there was a couple ping pongs. Yeah, but yeah.
So I mean, you've obviously not been like afraid to bounce around, or have you? Like, were you nervous at all? Like, because I mean, especially you talk about Kazakhstan.
Yeah,
like
Kazakhstan.
That's not even a place like a lot of people know about. So like, you just like getting up and like, are you raising your hand whenever somebody says, "Hey, we got an opportunity"? Are you just raising your hand to like volunteer? Or are you like?
I think there's multiple pieces. One, you do have to be vocal about what you want, right? And that's one of the great things about Chevron. If you your career's in your hand, there's the CDP process, career development process, where you are literally focusing on your short-term goals, right, in the 0 to 5 year range, and then you put the longer-term goals. Hey, I want to be a manager over this asset. Hey, I want to work internationally, and so you make these plans. You obviously have your supervisor and manager, bless those plans, and then you have a sponsor that tries to give you opportunity to get there. And so one of the things I've always wanted to do was to rotate in a complex facility, multiple processing units, and then usually that's an international asset. And so post-pandemic, the opportunity came, and it kind of met some of my personal needs at the time, and I took the job, and it was interesting. It was fun.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And when you mentioned like sponsor, a lot of people don't even know what a sponsor is. They may have heard a mentor or whatever, but like, how did Chevron align or assign a sponsor to you, or did you just kind of understand early on, like, okay, it's important for me to have somebody advocating like on my behalf, and then also like coaching me along the way? Like, how did you even find your sponsor or mentor, I guess, first?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is one, being in the right place at the right time, and then also being vocal, right? You know, my dad would always say a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And so when I would walk into certain rooms and I saw someone or I knew who they were, I would walk up to them and just start conversating. And it doesn't even have to be about the job at that point, right? You're trying to build a relationship and connect, and then the next step is always to follow up. Again, Chevron did a great job of educating the importance of mentors, both technical and professional mentors. And then the word sponsor is used frequently, right? So the functions have sponsors, but then you also want to seek out a sponsor that is that has your best interest in mind to try to help you bridge the gap, identify opportunities from a development standpoint, and then help you close gaps should those, the opportunities, halt your progress a bit.
Oh man, that's good. That's good. And I agree with you 100%. And I want real quick, do you even have like maybe a story you can share of like you kind of putting that into practice? Or I know some people may hear it and they're like, okay, yeah, that sounds cool or like easy, but like, what do I say? Like, here goes, especially if you're a recent grad, you walk into a meeting and you're scared to put your foot in your mouth, and it's a VP of whatever. Or even like for you, for example, like you're obviously a leader at your company, Fervo, and then maybe there's a recent grad comes in, they're not directly reporting to you, or maybe they are, but they don't even know what to say without putting their foot in their mouth. Like, what do they do? Do they like compliment you on your shoes? Like, what do they do, Quinn? Like, what kind of like just practical advice do you have there?
It's funny, and I'll speak to the latter first. It's what I've seen is the younger engineers, or at least the ones that I'm interacting with in most situations, they're not coming up to you and asking. And so I remember when I was in that seat, and I'm the one that's like engaging and asking, hey, what is important to you? What do you want to do in your career? And then eventually I just lay it out and say, if you want to meet, just drop me a note and we can talk. It's easier that way.
Yeah.
I recall my first opportunity where I saw someone took interest in me. I had the opportunity to go to a forum in Singapore, a Chevron-focused forum in Singapore on power generation at this time, very early in my career. I want to say first 3 years of my career. And I submitted a presentation, and the business unit, excuse me, that I was assigned to felt that it was a good presentation to go. And again, when you're in those settings, you always have to ask yourself, why am I in this room, right? And that doesn't necessarily have to be at a conference, but like, why are you here? And so I was always good at like understanding that, I want to learn. These are all of the SMEs globally in power generation from Chevron. And so when they would present, whether or not I understood it or not, I was very focused on trying to get something additional information out of them. And so I would ask a lot of questions. Anybody have questions in the audience? I'm the guy that was walking up
First one walking up to the mic
and asking about it and say, okay, I see, you have a reactive power drop off here when you started this unit, and then it spiked here. Where was the compensation coming from? And then everyone would look and be like, what is he asking? Like, it was one of those things where, and I would continuously do this, not in a intentional way, but because I was genuinely interested in it. And at that time, the president of one of those BUs, grabbed me and we just started talking. And just because he had seen, like when you go to these conferences, introduce your name, where are you from, what do you do, and then you ask your question. Everyone will remember you at that point. And so I would do that, and then that's how that relationship would start, and that door would open.
Hey man, I love that. That's real practical advice that I think anybody can do. And I think a lot of times people miss that opportunity because they're scared of like asking a question that maybe they think people will say, oh, that's a stupid question or whatever. Or you're just intimidated to get up there in front of a room full of people and kind of put themselves out there. But I think that's a great way to stand out. And I've done that in even large or small settings, and you never know who will come up to you afterwards. Like, oh, I was thinking the same question, and just kind of, exchange business cards and follow up from there. So definitely. I think it's a phenomenal piece of advice.
Definitely.
Man, I see Chevron got the bag, man. They sending you to Singapore and everything else. Like, what's been the favorite spot you've been to, man, because of work-related travel?
Man, that's a tough one. I'll say my first international with Chevron was Toronto, again, for another conference. I went to Kuwait. That was pretty cool.
What year? 'Cause I'm like, what was happening over there?
This was like 2019. And so there's an asset there, JV, and again we were doing an assurance activity, right? And so at that time, I was in the Center of Technical Excellence, and you had the opportunity to audit a business unit from a technical discipline. At this point, I was in operations, and so we were focused on the restart of said asset, and had an opportunity to engage with the individuals working there, and very inviting. Took us out for dinner, explained the culture, and it was just a great trip, and we had a lot of confidence in that business unit to perform, and that was one of my favorite places.
Okay, cool. And you know what that made me. I didn't have this question written down, but I know it's something that a lot of people don't really think about, but I know it's really important. You've obviously worked on teams in these different parts of the world. That means different cultures, different like ethnicities, all of that. Like, how have you been able to like navigate that? Because I mean, young black man from St. Louis, you get dropped into Australia, that's one culture. You get dropped into Kuwait, that's another culture. You get dropped into wherever else, Kazakhstan, that's another. I don't even know if I'm saying that name right. I feel like I'm not, but we'll fact check it later. You get dropped into all these different places, and it's like you got to learn like the culture and the environment. Like, how do you kind of navigate that, even from like a cultural teamwork experience? Yeah. And then, not to complicate it, but were you also a people leader at these places as well?
Yeah, so I'll answer the easy question first, right? So in certain instances, I was either leading the work in Kazakhstan. Yes, I had managerial responsibilities over a team, a diverse team, and so yes, I had to step in. I had to perform. I had to gain the respect of my colleagues and direct reports. I think when we talk about engaging with different cultures, one, you want to keep yourself open. And then it goes back to, from a foundational level, remembering how you were brought up, right? And so with the utmost respect, right, when I look at what my parents instilled in me, always looking someone in the eyes, always shaking their hands, always, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Just giving people that genuine love and respect that you want to receive. And that goes a long way. Take a genuine interest into people. It's not always about, hey, have you done assignment X, Y, and Z? Where are we at on this deliverable? Hey, how was your day? How was your weekend? How's your family? Call people by their names. Like that. Yeah. That's extremely important. Make people feel valued. And I just go into those different environments with the open mind and try to be my genuine self, and not try to put on a mask or appear to be something that I'm not.
That's good, man. No, I think that's really powerful, and I'm glad you learned that. And it seemed like you had to learn it early on in your career, because I saw you were like on the fast track, moving into different roles and positions and even leadership early on. And I know we were talking off camera, you were even a leader back in college as well. Mm-hmm. Like, was that, I think, what were like some of the leadership positions you had, even going back to college?
Yeah, I actually did student government in college.
Okay.
Yeah, at the University of Tulsa, and smaller university, right? At the time, smallest D1 in the nation. We had about 2,800 students undergrad. And as I was trying to find my place, coming from St. Louis to Oklahoma, I've always had this doer mindset. And so I got involved in student government, first attached to athletics department, putting on the tailgates, planning the spirit events, things of that nature. And then I was able to kind of grow. I won't say I did that on my own by any means. It's always, again, somebody that's looking out for you in some instances. And so there was one mentor. Wasn't really my professor, but he was kind of the advisor of the organization, and he saw something in me, and he said, "Why don't you run for this, or why are you not speaking up?" And so I took note of that, and I started doing just that when we're in session, when we're in the cabinet meetings. Started asking questions, challenging, identifying opportunities to improve student life, and eventually I became like what you would classify as the chief operations officer of the student government my junior year. And then at which point I decided to pivot and become the president of our Association of Black Collegians, just to one, bolster the presence of that organization and do more, not only at the university, but the community of Tulsa.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have been a leader without the mentor, like seeing something in you before you kind of saw it in yourself? Because, I mean, I think it was, I'll let you answer. I have my own thoughts, but I'll let you answer. Let me hear it.
Yeah, I think I've always felt that I could be a leader, but when someone else sees it in you, it just gives you additional confidence to do that thing. Like a lot of people would probably look at me or look back at the younger years and say, Yeah, Quinn was very quiet in most instances. He didn't speak a
Like high
lot.
school, middle school, you were like,
Yeah, very,
Okay.
very shy individual. And then, like I said, when someone tells you, hey, I see something in you, it helps you find your voice.
yeah,
And so I do attribute a lot of the positions that I've been to, when I look back to that individual that said, hey, why don't you try this? So
that's a good point. Yeah, no, I was gonna say the same thing. Like I feel like I have a hard time imagining a version of you that wasn't like natural. Like I couldn't see you not being a natural leader. But obviously, like the more repetitions, the more practice you get, like it's obviously you're gonna become a better leader. I would say, but I'm not surprised also about like shy introvertedness because a lot of engineers naturally have that type of personality. So not too surprising there. But you're obviously doing a good job at it. Good stuff, man. What would you say? What would you say has been the toughest leadership role that you had, like throughout your career? Like which one you felt like was the most demanding, most challenging, hardest?
the Kazakhstan role would be one of the top, but I'm actually going to say when I was a maintenance supervisor.
Okay.
I was a maintenance supervisor in a role which was very demanding geographically. So,
Where was that at again?
So I was living at the time, my primary residence in Bakersfield,
Okay.
and we had operating assets across California, and so my physical office was an hour away. So every morning I'm driving an hour away, and start a shift is typically roughly 6 a.m. So 6 a.m. start a shift. I was the supervisor of that field. Then we had another field that was another hour and a half away from that location. And so I'm driving 2.5 hours on some days. And then the final location was 3 hours away. And so at that point, I was doing like 1,000 miles a week, probably, in a vehicle. Just going between, the various assets, taking care of my team, making myself visible, responding to outages. And then I had to go back to the home base because that's where my manager was, and we would have team functions. And that was a physically challenging role. Also challenging because that was the first time that I had frontline supervisor experience for non-technical teams. Mm-hmm. And so I'm dealing with operations staff, individuals that have been doing this job for 20 plus years. And here is a young kid coming in, engineer, and the first comment is, this gentleman must think he knows everything. The engineer is going to tell me how to do my job better. And I actually have a good friend who was kind of my mentor. He had the adjacent role in a different asset, but he would kind of coach me up. He's like, this isn't corporate. You can't come in here and throw process at this and expect people to respond to you. And so I had to learn quickly, again, how to relate, how to listen, and then, actually implement in a collaborative fashion. And so that was probably like my most challenging role, but extremely beneficial.
Yeah. How long did you have that role for?
18 months.
Dang. You driving like that the whole time?
Pretty much, for the most part. And I'm staying out there too in some instances, right? So it's a lot of hotels, but it is it's a good development role. For sure.
Okay, gotcha. No, man, I think that can be very demanding. I know. I think anytime, like especially for engineers, when they start interacting with like the operators, and like I'm thinking, I worked in a manufacturing facility briefly at in Detroit, Hamtramck for General Motors. And like it was when I went from sitting in the corporate office in the desk with other engineers to moving to the manufacturing plant where you're dealing with union guys and everything else. Yep. Like I remember my mentor pulling me aside. He's like, look, it's a different playbook when you're in the manufacturing facility versus like when you're in the office. And I think you took the same advice your mentor gave you is the same advice mine gave me in terms of you got to meet the people where they are and like just speak to them like they regular people, respectful, everything that you mentioned before. But the whole you coming in there, to your point, I was probably 26, and you trying to tell somebody that's been doing this for 30 years, like the right way to do their job, you're gonna find out real quick, like what they think, and it ain't gonna be the filter version either. It's not gonna be the corporate version. So it's just you got to meet them where they're at and ask questions, try to understand, be open. Yeah. So I think all those things were things that like a lot of us had to learn throughout our career. So
it's an incredibly valuable skill to have. I mean, in any relationship, right? That's how you present yourself. Don't just come in and try to force change.
For sure. Man, so how did you even land your first job at Chevron out of college?
Again, connection. So at the time, you're speaking early 2000 or later 2000s. oil sector doing well, top petroleum schools at that time. You're looking at UT, you're looking at LSU, University of Tulsa, OU, and Tulsa was getting a lot of majors coming in to interview the petroleum engineers. It was like the largest class when I was there. I had a connection again through. I used to also give tours at the school through through that organization. And this gentleman had worked at Chevron, and he said, "Hey, is there an opportunity for me to interview?" Because they didn't recruit at that time engineers for facilities at University of Tulsa. And so my resume got passed along, and they liked the autonomous robotics research that I had done, and then that got me in the door as far as the interview, and then the rest was history. And then started driving from Tulsa to California.
That's crazy. Okay, so how long did you work on the autonomous robotic stuff? So
Was
that just a class?
No. So it's not classwork, right? So you're either doing it after hours or during free periods, and then the summertime.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, the work that you did on the side really kind of helped. Yeah. Of course, you did other things, but that really helped you kind of stand out.
Definitely.
Okay. And then the tour, the guy you gave a tour to, was this kid trying to go to the school?
No,
or what?
Well, so he was actually, it's called University Ambassadors, and so he was doing tours as well. And so you try to get a lot of different representation across the university from, different organizations, athletes, fraternities, sororities, things of that nature, student government, and just to have a good representation of the university. And he had done it, and we just kind of connected. We had some mutual friends, and yeah, the rest was history.
Wow. Okay, man, that's dope. What did the first salary look like after joining Chevron? Can you share that?
I won't give a number. I'll say it was extremely competitive. It was like eye opening for someone to come from St. Louis. Even when you look at the internships, right? I have friends that a lot of my friends are not engineers that I grew up with, but they're focused on like business or fashion or things that are the arts. And so like I remember like showing them like the internship check, and we were all like, wow, this is crazy. And so when you translate to full time, extremely competitive offers, and then the ability to scale from promotion year after year is always there.
Yeah.
So.
Did some of your friends be like, dang, I should have majored in engineering maybe instead of fashion or?
Well, they're doing quite well. I'll say that I have some really, really talented friends that are doing amazing things with their craft right now, and so probably doing stop that.
It's recording, Quinn.
Yeah, let me. I don't want to do that, but yeah.
No, that's what's up. That's cool though, man. No, I think. So I'm imagining that's definitely like life changing money. I think like most engineers fresh out of college, they're like, damn, I didn't know you can make like this type of money. So I think that's like a similar experience, I would say.
The data's there though.
Yeah.
Right? It's published. It's public knowledge. When you look at the salaries of various degrees at that time, it's out there.
Yeah. What did is that one of the reasons why you even decided to pursue engineering? Was like you was like looking at like income potential in high school or whatever? Or?
Not really. I had an itch for the fashion bug at one point too, but I was always good in math. Like that was my thing. And so my exposure to engineering, actually, I attribute to a program called Project Lead the Way.
Okay.
Project Lead the Way is a nonprofit that develops STEM education for K through 12. And at the point of when I entered it was a pilot for my university. And so what they did is they tapped the 8th graders who were in the advanced algebra course. They said, okay, we have a new opportunity. We're going to put you in a course called Introduction to Engineering. My first exposure to engineering. And so we learned the fundamentals, how to solve problems. What do engineers do? How to tinker? How to apply your skills from other coursework and actually make something happen. And from there's another course. The next one is Principles of Engineering. Mm-hmm. And what's funny about this, and we talked about it a little bit. The class size started to drop at this point. And the third course I took was digital electronics, and then that's when I made the connection and said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to be an electrical engineer. And so we had we had a PCB printed circuit board. And a briefcase to hold all of our hardware, and we were programming microprocessors, learning Boolean language, and this is all in the junior year. And so I'm getting exposed to these real skills that are applicable in the world, and I decided to, at that point, that's what I want to pursue. So the college search started from there. Who has the electrical engineering program that fits my needs? And the rest is history.
Gotcha. So how'd you pick? I mean, you from St. Louis, Tulsa. I mean, that's quite a way. How'd you end up settling on Tulsa?
I think the theme of our talk, and it's funny that it's going this way because I've been hearing this is relationship, right? So there was a young lady who went to my high school who ended up going to the University of Tulsa. She for their senior design class, they had built a Segway, and so early mid 2000s to see a Segway in person that someone actually built, programmed, they brought it to my high school. They're riding around in it, and this is for the engineering course. They let us play with it, and we're just having a ball. And she's like, "Yeah, we're at University of Tulsa. Here's my professor, and we'll waive the application fee," which is huge, back then, the $40, $100 fees. And I applied, and I ended up getting in. And so, the options for me were Mizzou right there, St. Louis University, or Tulsa. And so let me get a little bit away from home.
Okay.
So that mom couldn't hunt me down every weekend, but still close enough to visit. And
Popping up on you on campus, like, "Hey, Quinn, baby, what you doing? What's going on? Are you only child?
I'm not. I have an older sister. Yeah.
So it's two. So you're the baby.
Yeah, I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
He said, "Let me say youngest, not baby." But yeah, I know the moms refer to the youngest as a baby. That's why I said it that way. But no, that's cool, man. I think was it like scholarship? Because obviously, like out of state tuition ain't no joke.
Yeah, so University of Tulsa was actually a private university, and the recruiter or my admissions counselor at that time had done a lot of legwork and made it an offer that we couldn't walk away from.
Okay.
Right, and so whether that came with the work study package, and then that's how we got into the autonomous robotics, because that too came with a scholarship. And so I bundled all these packages together. Then eventually I got a Chevron scholarship. And then I had some other scholarships just from writing essays. And so it worked out. It worked out a lot.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's real cool. Good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, so I know you kind of talked about like how you landed the job at Chevron, man. And you hit on all the different roles you've had at Chevron well. I didn't even ask you off camera, but like, how did you land the job at Fervo? Did somebody come tap you on the shoulder like, "Hey, I saw your LinkedIn profile," or was it again relationships? Like, how'd you land your current role?
Yeah, I think it's well, I'll say no, there wasn't any tapping. I'll say the CEO, we have a prior relationship. We both went to the University of Tulsa, and so just being plugged into the LinkedIn universe, I had saw that Fervo had successfully closed their Series C, and just a simple congratulations. I see you have some roles posted. Would love to catch up. And I applied for a role at the time, or I considered applying, and at that point it was like, well, maybe you're a little too qualified, but we have this other role, which wasn't even on my radar. You mentioned, it appears that I know a lot about geothermal, and so the role they had was a geothermal facilities engineer. And in my mind, I'm like, I've had exposure to power plant, or I had exposure to geothermal actually earlier in my career, like year one. We're talking like a 0.5 megawatt system, which was a pilot project. And even then, my scope was only limited to interconnection, so interfacing with the utility and developing the applications to bring this extra generation online. Nonetheless, at Fervo, what we do, our hiring process is pretty structured, right? So panel interviews, typically we do give out technical prompts. And so once I decided to actually, apply for the role after talking with several of the leadership there, I had my technical prompt, and I completed it, and then I had to present out to a lot of the company at that time. And at that point, I think I was around like number 30 or so at the company. And so you had, supply chain representation, operations, strategy, all grilling me about a subject matter that I had deep dived over like a week and a half. And the rest is history. I was the first, topside facility engineer at the company, and now I've built the team out to execute our large portfolio of projects.
That's what's up. How big is the team now that you've built out?
I'm gonna say under the power generation function, we probably have about 20 employees.
Okay.
Yeah, Fervo actually just hit a pretty significant milestone of going over 100 employees.
Oh,
I think we're around like 105 now, and so
congrats to you and the team, man.
Yeah, I think when we first engaged, we were over at the other location.
Yeah.
And it was definitely more like a startup, right? And,
yeah.
So.
No, I'm laughing a little bit because you had told me when y'all moved to the new spot, and you was like, yeah, now we got the nice corporate, like, big office, and Yeah, I like the office that you guys had when we first met. It kind of gave me that startup vibe.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's a lot of busy bees, a lot of people walking around doing stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of had like that just out of college, like making this thing work. But it's cool to see the growth.
It was definitely a fun office. That wasn't even the first office I started in. When I started, we were at a WeWork. And so that was like,
Downtown?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think off Main Street. And I could
Yeah.
And so at that point, it was like a room this size, desk to the wall, and it was very tight. And it's funny, you come from a corporate setting, and I'm like, man, my ergonomics aren't even set up right here. And that was the first thing that kind of came out of my mind.
They talking about ergonomics, bro. What you talking about? You better grab a chair.
Pretty much, and get to work. So, no, it was a cool space. And then we graduated to the next space where, it was larger to accommodate the staff, to accommodate the growth. And we started becoming more of a community, right? Culture is extremely important at Fervo. Okay. I think that everyone can get along with anyone within the company, and that's one of the strengths which allows us to sacrifice, to collaborate, and to execute, right? We genuinely like each other, which is pretty cool. And now we're in this new spot, and as I mentioned, we're over 100 employees, and so like you have to be very intentional to maintain those relationships. So like I have to walk across, and you met our CFO at the last a few NESB events ago. He's on the exact opposite corner, so like I may only see him once or so a week, but it's intentional and or not intentional. We are intentional about like, hey, let's go grab a coffee at the midpoint and just catch up. And so
you met the halfway point for a coffee or a drink. All right.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
You have to swing by one of these days. And
No, let me check out the office, man. It's that's cool to see the growth. Like I read the press releases and everything like that, but it's cool to actually see you guys, putting the work in, growing the company and everything. All right, cool, man. Yeah. So that's exciting to see the growth and everything like that.
I still had to interview, still had to perform, right? And so that's the important piece about that. Every hire, no matter relationship, previous experience, you still have to demonstrate the right competency, and then it has to be a cultural fit. So
for sure. Like what even inspired you to send the DM? Like, were you specifically looking to leave Chevron, or were you like, was it more so looking for the next challenge, or like what even, I guess?
No, I think it was purely, just happy to see someone being so successful in your network. I wasn't looking, right? Yeah. And you see the career trajectory here at Chevron.
Okay, so you weren't looking necessarily to leave Chevron at the moment, just looking?
No, and like we talked about earlier, when we start looking at career development plans, your career mapping is in your hands. And so, I had already identified, what my next role would potentially be after leaving Kazakhstan. And again, you have the sponsor relationship. And so I was pretty satisfied where I was. Again, but when I look at the relationship piece of what Fervo was doing, I was just genuinely excited to see success for someone so close in my network. And that led to, one thing led to another. And then I actually, applied and went from there.
Gotcha. Man, when you talk about like making the shift from Chevron to Fervo, obviously there's like different environment, different, culture, different experience going from like large Fortune whatever company to, growing startup. They're on the right track, just closed their Series C. Like what's the pros and cons of going, legacy established company? I guess Chevron's probably 100 years old or something. I don't know. And then Fervo, startup company. Like what's the pros and cons of working at a startup as opposed to working as like a legacy company per se?
Yeah, I probably won't classify it as pros and cons, but I will say there are significant differences, right? When you look at typical corporate structures, you have various functions that are well-defined, have established processes, and your day-to-day looks completely different. Now that I'm on the other side, we wear many hats, which is exciting in itself. And so not only am I looking at, the technical development of my team, I'm also looking at the execution for projects. I'm also looking at, different assurance activities. Sometimes those things would be segmented in a large corporate entity. And so that's one of the benefits of joining a startup, is because you get to see so many different things and get exposed to things that you normally wouldn't have the opportunity to do, whether that be, taking a deeper dive in project finance, whether engaging with legal to discuss contracts, maybe even drafting said contracts. Those are things that are you would have to be in the function or at the right place at the right time to really see at a large corporate structure. And so I'm just grateful for that opportunity to kind of float through various functions, and that's something we see for many of our employees at Fervo.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Now I was just kind of curious because I know like even we lightly talked or jokingly talked about like the chairs and everything like that. It's like at some point you're like, oh man, it's just I'm sure it's like an eye-opening kind of thing. And you kind of go in expecting it maybe, but I'm sure once you get there, like, oh yeah, this is a lot different compared to that. And not necessarily in a negative way at all, but just in terms of like you said, like differences in terms of everything. So.
Yeah, we classify ourselves as a scrappy startup, but we do have better chairs now.
All right, that's what's up, man. I'm glad to see
you have to come by. I have a very ergonomic chair that everyone gives me grief over, but it meets my needs and keeps me healthy. So, nonetheless, like it's we're scrappy startups, so we are cost conscious, right? We want to be good stewards of the capital that we've raised over time.
Of course,
we don't do the business class flights. Typically at a large corporate setting. Anything greater than 5 hours, you're automatically qualifying. But we try to get things done.
That's cool. That's cool, man. So you talked about building a team out. You said you were the first topside employee, and now you're about 20 people. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what you looked for in these candidates, these people that you bringing in, man. Right? Because I think there is a demographic and audience of people that watch the podcast, and they're either entry level or maybe they're in college and looking for that first job, or maybe they're already in their career and experience, but they're trying to make that next step. So I think it could be valuable for them to hear, like from a hiring manager, what you typically look for in candidates. So like when you create a role, kind of walk me through that process. Like, are you personally creating the job description? Are you working with HR to create the job description? And then like, what do you look for in the candidates themselves?
Yeah, so our hiring managers, myself included, are all responsible for developing the job description for any role that they want to post. And so there is a collaborative effort once you get to about 90%, and then our people operations function steps in and tries to craft it and then help you target the appropriate candidates. Now, when I look at the holistic project, right, we're talking about, our two projects, the one specifically in Utah, 90 megawatt phase 1, phase 2 being 300 plus megawatts. There's so many disciplines that are important there. Right? The first thing, you have to define your requirements. That requires strong technical resources. Then you have to look at the execution teams, right? Who's going to drive schedule? Who's going to maintain costs? Those are my project individuals. And then you have the site teams, right? And so that's a hybrid of your operations folks and then your construction teams as well. And we just kind of iterate on those processes. It's pretty standard to develop job descriptions for any engineering function, right? As I mentioned, the cost and schedule, that's my project engineers. They are truly accountable for that. They're managing the risk and mitigating the impact of the schedule, and then also mitigating balloons or increases on the cost side. The technical individuals need to make sure that the equipment is fully specified, that it performs as designed, and then also look for new opportunities, whether it's technology evaluation or doing pilot projects. And so there's a varied level of skill that I'm looking for there. That piece is easy. You can post it. You can get a resume that meets all those needs. The focus for us is culture. Is it a good fit? Do they have the right behaviors to engage externally and internally to help us achieve our goals? And so that's the piece that requires screening calls. Yeah. Right, where the personality comes out. And a lot of times, I may throw individuals off and may not even talk about the experience. What'd you do last week? What does your off time look like? What are your hobbies, right? And that kind of helps, ease the conversation, and then you can bring it back to the technical piece. But again, I'm looking for culture. I'm looking for individuals that are transparent, honest. And what I mean by that is I'm not expecting anyone to have all the answers. I'll be the first one to tell you I don't know everything, but I will openly tell you that and say, hey, but I can figure that out, or I can go get someone that can figure that out. I don't want anyone that's just going to talk around in circles and maybe not deliver to that point. Right. And another skill, which we talk about the engineering process, which we learned early on, is we have to be able to think critically. Mm-hmm. Right. Figure it out, make an assumption, put the stake in the ground, and then go forward and justify it. If we learn some new information, that's great. Now we can change. If not, we continue down that path.
That's a good point. And I'd imagine like not everybody can do that so well. They feel like, especially in a startup environment, maybe they feel like they need everything defined and like not necessarily making assumptions so much, but having all the data. Like I don't know if that's something that maybe people struggle with, in your opinion.
Yeah, I've seen challenges there, but then that's where that mentor relationship becomes so important.
Yeah.
That engagement and transparency and being vulnerable in that sense with your supervisor or manager also becomes important.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the things we test for with our supervisor, or at least my direct reports, is, hey, how are you making your direct reports thinking visible?
Mm-hmm.
Are you prodding? Are you asking them the leading questions? Are you helping them steer the ship in any way that can help them feel open to actually divulge information or divulge uncertainties that they have about a particular scope?
Mm-hmm.
But we all work in a collaborative setting, and so you have your functional level meetings, you have your technical meetings, you have your external meetings, and so there's an opportunity to continue to build what we call the frame or the entire basis to which we'll develop.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, I don't know. Are you able to tell me like what's been your I don't want to name necessarily, more so like characteristics and like kind of a description of the person, like your best hire that you've made? Like, what did you see in that person that you were like, okay, even to this day, we're like, all right, yeah, this is the guy or the girl. This was the right decision I made. Like, what did that person have to you?
Yeah, I think if I when I look at my entire team, everyone has great characteristics,
Yeah.
right? And some mirror, and then obviously, I see myself in some individuals to some extent, and one of the things is individuals that are able to pick it up and just run with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's extremely important. Now, everyone's not like that. I also appreciate the individual that's going to look at the suite of options, take their time, do a thorough analysis, and then present to me the best alternative. And then there's also the individual that will come and, the humility aspect of things. Again, being transparent. Hey, can you help me work through this? Right. And so each one of my team members, they all demonstrate excellent behaviors, great technical backgrounds, and it's really been a honor to lead this team.
How experienced is the team? Like, is it kind of a mix of like recent grads and like really experienced people, or what?
Yeah, I'm gonna say 0 to 30 years.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that is very broad.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, how is the process flipping it now to you as the leader? Like, obviously that involves a lot of trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like you gotta, excuse me, maybe you imagine something being done a certain way up to the Quinn standard, and like you have it in your mind, like, okay, this should be done step A, B, and C, and they bring it back and you're like, hey, Quinn, I'm done. I did steps D, E, F. Yeah. And you're like, maybe the solution is okay, but the way they went about it, or maybe the solution's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And maybe just having to get to that point where you can trust your team.
Yeah.
Like, how has that process been for you as a leader?
It's been one that it's a muscle I've had to develop. I'll be honest, right? To start from, employee one on the surface side, and then now we're here. I have had to release things. My way is not the only way to do things. In fact, I de-scope myself from many aspects of it, and I had to learn how to trust. Now, when you talk about, like, I may give direction and say, hey, I need A through F, and I may only get A through D. I have to test myself. One of the things I learned in my previous corporate life is that sometimes good is good enough, right? And so, like, I have to say, I'm not looking for perfection here. I ask for a deliverable. Is it good enough for us to progress and continue to build on? And so my team understands that there is a element of speed of execution that we have to maintain given our development cycle. And so I am very accepting and again, trusting of the team to do their job. That's why I hired them, or else what's the point, right? I can't be everywhere. I can't make all the decisions. And so it's good to have that strong team that gets it and understands where we're trying to go.
Talked about your leadership also earlier. We talked about, how somebody first saw that in you, and then you've continued to have like leadership roles throughout your career. For somebody who maybe hasn't had that mentor, that person kind of speaking life into them, but they're kind of been curious about leadership, or, maybe they've kind of put one toe in, but now they're like, okay, hey, I want to take that next step. Yeah. Like, what advice would you recommend for them to like take that next step to go from just a individual contributor into an actual people leader within their organization?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say the first step is use the resources around you, right? So the mentorships are important, right? And they don't have to be direct functional mentors. They can be outside of it. They don't have to even be at work, right? Everyone has a vast network. It can be a nonprofit organization they're involved in. It could be a professional society that they're involved in. Think of an opportunity where you can spread yourself and the risk may be a little lower, right? If it's something you're passionate about, it's easier to step in said leadership role. We met at a professional organization, and so there's leadership roles that are posted there. Start there, develop the skill set, get some feedback, and now you have something that's demonstrated on your resume, and now you can take back to your employer and say, hey, I've led teams in this function. I'm ready to do it here, right? Also, you need to understand the skill sets that are required to get there. Some of it, I don't know if time is so much of a thing now to become a leader. In fact, I don't think it is, but there are some skills that need to be developed, right? And a lot of that is in self-reflection. Who are you under these situations? Are you available? How do you react? How do you manage your time? Can you manage others and do your own thing? That's something that it takes a certain person or a level of introspection before you can step into those various spaces.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot of self-reflection that goes into that and self-analysis, and I think that's a great point. At Fervo, you guys are growing just at employee number 105. It's peak recruiting season at the moment. What roles y'all got open at Fervo? What should people be on the lookout for?
Everything and anything.
Okay.
I haven't even looked at the latest slate. I know that the recruiting team is at Stanford today. Our POPs coordinator, awesome guy, one-man team for a while. I think he just hired help as of this week.
Okay.
And so he did the scale up from like 35 to 105, which is insane.
That's wild.
And you've met Joe, and so great guy. And now he's taking it to the next level. But we have internships available. I'll have, I believe, 3 interns not reporting to me, but within the function, a few technical roles, and then we have some field engineer opportunities at the project location in Utah. Also have some technical roles, electrical engineers. Everyone needs them. We need them too, right? We're looking for project managers, project engineers, strategic associates, development managers. Really cool job, interconnection manager role available if you have T&D, transmission distribution experience interfacing with the utilities. Just a lot of roles posted right now. The company is growing, right? We have to execute these projects, and that's our focus. And we feel that we just need a few more pieces to take it there.
Gotcha. What is like the I guess give me your vision for like geothermal, or maybe even the organization's vision for geothermal, not just Fervo itself, but like I guess I'm kind of looking at it like we talked, what was it, Greenland that has geothermal?
We were talking Iceland, right? And
yeah, so like when I'm looking at Iceland, for example, I watched like some kind of YouTube video where they talked about how I guess Iceland used to be like a poor country and had challenges. All they did was import everything, but now they're at a point with using geothermal where like they can pretty much run their own country on geothermal. I don't know if that's exclusively or what, but it just seems like there's a lot of potential there. So I'm just kind of curious, like from your perspective, like if geothermal kind of takes off in the States the way maybe it can, what does that future look like? Does it look like, maybe we don't have to rely on fossil fuels as much or at all? Or like do we maybe hit that objective of net zero, carbon zero, whatever? Like what does that kind of future look like if we're able to execute on geothermal, maybe Fervo independently, and then the other industry or the industry in its entirety?
Yeah. That's a great question. When we look at what Fervo's doing, what we're doing, right, we have a very firm target. Right now we have 500 plus megawatts actually contracted. Okay. Right, those are the 2 projects that I mentioned. What's been split in phases, the Utah project and the Nevada project as well. And then we have the ability to execute more contracts. When we look at our acreage across the U.S., the resource pool is large and vast. There are challenges we have to mitigate, but we're doing a great job of doing that. When you look at interconnection challenges, when you look at supply chain challenges, the things that we're implementing in our functional teams now, our ability to standardize, our ability to drive down costs. I talked about the renowned performance of the drilling team. When you looked at a pie chart or a breakdown of capital costs, typically you would have saw the drilling costs being the biggest risk. And that's purely based on how many days is the rig sitting on the pad drilling a hole. We brought that down to like 20 days, right? And so looking at those techniques, we're now doing similar stuff at the facility level, right? And so you look at process improvement, optimization, tool selection, supplier partnerships, alliances, all focus on driving down the dollar per kW figure, right? And because we have to be competitive when you look at the other resources available, whether that be wind, solar, traditional power plants, we have the ability to compete, and we believe our technology allows us to do that.
Yeah. Wait, and then can you put it into context, like the megawatts? When you mention megawatts, like you mentioned 500. Like, what is that I don't know if you know the answer off the top of your head. Like, what is that power? Is that powering like a neighborhood, or is it powering like an entire city, and for maybe how long?
Yeah, it's funny. It's if you, I don't know if you were at Tech Day, and our CFO did he's funny because he just relocated to the Woodlands, and so when he talked about it, he put it in the metropolitan, like he's like, we can power Houston, you can power with Woodlands, you can power this, and so you're talking wide scale powering from just like geothermal assets at our project commercial pilot, right? That those megawatts, and I talked about 3.5, we're talking hundreds of homes, right? And so the opportunity for this resource to be impactful at the residential level and also commercial, because we talked about data centers, is exponential. We believe we have a multi-gigawatt pipeline just based off of our holdings, our ability to execute and develop these assets.
Gotcha. And then one last question on the geothermal side. Can you kind of give me the story of how like Fervo Energy started, like, and who are the co-founders, and kind of like how it started?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I'll do my best to kind of give the pitch, right? It's so Tim Latimer, Dr. Jack Norbeck. Tim Latimer went to University of Tulsa. Again, when I talked about the recruiting cycle, it's heavy oil and gas, and so he actually went to become a driller, working on the rig. Had this idea of these techniques of what scaled the shale revolution, right? And so when you look at what Mitchell did, and then for Devin to step in and then continue to scale it, drilling horizontal oil, stimulating the ability to recover this oil at such a fast pace and produce large quantities of oil. That same technology is what we're applying to geothermal, and that's where Tim Latimer had the idea of, well, why can't we apply it here? And so he started researching it, started to become very focused on it, and then he thought, well, where can I gain more resources to learn about this, going to conferences, making connections, attended Stanford, as I mentioned, and eventually synced up with Dr. Jack Norbeck, and then from there synced up with our VP of operations, who has a vast drilling experience, and then from there synced up with our our VP of development, who has a strong background in power markets, and came together to develop this company, right? And so it's just really a passion, an idea that Dr. Jack Norbeck and Tim were very passionate about, and realized that we can carry it forward because no one was doing it here in geothermal. There may have been challenges, like we talk about technology development, we talk about process improvement, but really just understanding that, hey, this is something that we need. We need 24/7 clean, reliable power, and then understanding how we can make a difference in the world really just led them to start the company and go from there.
Gotcha, man. And then how many years later are we at now from that day?
I think it was 2017 they kind of came together, and then went from there.
7 years later. Okay, yeah. Nice, good stuff. Quinn, if geothermal gets to the capacity that it could reach, are we going to see like the death of like oil and gas and fossil fuels? Or are we like, is that what we're going to see, or what?
I don't think you'll see a death, right? That's a rather strong word. I think, as you look at megawatts being put online, whether it be other assets, there is a replacement to it. As we continue to drive down costs, I think there is the strong possibility that we become the number one opportunity to power the world. Yeah.
Okay. Do you envision a future where maybe some of these legacy companies even try to compete with the Fervos of the world in terms of geothermal?
I don't know if I'd say, because a lot of when you say legacy companies, I assume you mean traditional oil and gas majors.
Yeah.
A lot of them do have plays in geothermal. They may not be next gen geothermal as I classified it or as we classify it, but they do have assets, right? And when I started my career, I talked about my exposure to geothermal. That was in California for a pilot project, but at the time, Chevron had a lot of assets in Indonesia that were, which is a large geothermal market there. And so a lot of the players, if you look at, a lot of the grants that are being awarded now, you have a Chevron that was received a grant. There are other startups in the space, and there's other leaders in geothermal operation that have assets online and are trying to grow as well.
Okay, good stuff. Hey man, that was a good talk about your career, geothermal. But the one thing we did forget to talk about was these books you got here, man. You're an engineer and an author, which is I would say pretty rare. But I mean, what inspired? You got two books here. One is Like Me,
Yeah.
And then the other one is Like Me Leaders. What inspired these? What inspired you to write these books?
Man, it's interesting. It's been one of those projects that, you know, I'll call that sat to the side for a while. You know, when we look at life gets extremely busy and things get paused. But for me, this started in like 2016. I talked about my experience of why I became an engineer, and it was actually at a conference. And that conference for this organization, Project Lead, the way I was presenting, I was talking about my journey. And what I saw was, as I presented and looked around this high-profile conference, there weren't a lot of individuals that looked like me, right? And so that's where the first idea came about. And oftentimes, as I would visit schools, I would have the parents or teachers reach out, hey, can you talk to my son? Can you come talk to my class and do this thing? And I'm just one person. And so what's the easiest way to reach other individuals? For me, I felt at that time just writing a book. And selfishly, like also, if you look at the main character for the first book, it's focused on my niece. She's the main character. And me not being around as I traveled quite a bit in my career early on, I wanted her to still understand what I did from the simplest terms, right? At a foundation level. What is an engineer? How do you become an engineer? And so the focus of the book, Like Me, is it's career day for you know, the main character Zoe, and she says, you know, how can I know what I want to be if no one looks like me? And so then you go down this journey of, well, are you good at these things? And if you are, this is what you can be. And so there's various careers that are throughout the book, and that they're all STEM focused. And at the back you have some of those profound leaders and scientists that have done great things in the STEM world. And so that was the first book, and then I just carried the theme forward because it's not just limited to STEM careers, but there's other careers where individuals, you know, like ourselves don't see ourselves on a day-to-day basis. So
Yeah, no, I think it's much needed. You know, I think somebody told me the phrase like exposure leads to expansion, right? Where, you know, you get exposed to these things. I think you're a prime example of that, right? You attended this conference, you got exposed to STEM and robotics and everything at a young age in high school and in college. And I think it had a profound impact on you. And so I can only imagine like being able, well, I know I got 2 kids now. My oldest is 6, my youngest is 4. And like it does me joy to kind of be able to tell them about engineering and to hear them say, oh, I want to be an engineer like daddy. Yeah. And so that's different. That's cool. A different mindset. That's a different conversation that even I was able to have with my dad, you know, and it just, you know, it just exposes them to so much more and gives them a head start, better starting point than the alternative option. So much needed, man. I'm glad you did this. I think it's real powerful. I did see this one in particular, Like Me Leaders, had, you know, obviously a lot of political leaders, Barack Obama, Thurgood Marshall, Kamala Harris, RBG, former Supreme Justice. So good stuff, man. No, it's much needed. Where can people find the book if they're interested in like buying one for themselves, for their kid, or if it's a teacher looking to buy one for the class? Where can they find it?
There's a lot of different outlets. Always direct to the website, likemebook.com. There's an opportunity to purchase there, and then there's some other links to other outlets as well. And so those 2 books available. There's also a translated Spanish version for Like Me, Como Yo. And so great opportunity there to further expand.
Okay, Espanol. All right, cool. Hey, man, how hard was it to create a book? Like, was it pretty challenging, or like was it like, you know?
I mean, if you think about any goal we set for ourselves, how challenging is it if we just put our mind to it and focus in on it and dedicate the time, right? And so the process of it, right? First, you need the draft. Like I said, 2016, I had the idea. I wrote down the tagline. Didn't do anything for it for like another 3 years. Yeah. And then I focused and I said, I'm going to do this. Finished the draft. Started sending it out to submissions, got accepted by this publisher. And then that part, you go into storyboard. So more time dedicated to what does the main character look like? You know, the editor is working with you on word choice. And then you have the illustrator that's trying to give you ideas. And you say, well, change the character this way, change this, and what does this look like? And it's just more time to dedicate and focus on the development. So I set aside that time. I'll say that it probably was a 6-month process, 6 to 8 month process before I actually received a finished product. And then again, like I said, I was motivated to do another one, and I had kind of figured out the framework to do that and do it quickly. And so, yeah.
Okay. What do you think? This has a lot of potential, in my opinion. Like, you see yourself doing more for the series, or?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Hey, don't give me that. Like, I got a lot going on already. Look what you got. What's the next version, man?
I have a few more. I've written a few more, and so it's on my list. I'm working towards it. You know, and like you said, the series can expand, and you can go a lot deeper. Like the like me leader, or the regular like me, STEM focus. You know, it has various careers: doctors, mathematicians. I could just focus on medical, and I have some of those written. Like you can just go through the various levels of doctors, various types of engineers, and continue to build it. And so, you know, there's a lot of different ways it could go.
That's cool. That's cool, man. What Quinn? When I interview you again in 5 years, or maybe sooner, but when I interview you again in 5 years, like, what am I going to be introducing you as? Like, is it going to be I don't know, VP of whatever, or is it going to be CEO of whatever, or CEO of like me? But what else? Like, what do you see yourself in 5 years?
Man, in 5 years, a lot can change.
A lot,
right? At that point, we will have had 400 megawatts online.
Okay.
400 megawatts online, operating assets. And so at that point, my team should be optimizing those facilities.
Okay.
And then potentially we'll have that operations arm figured out. But then there's more projects to be developed shortly after there. And so if we talk about that timeline, hey, we have operating assets on site. We're making money. There's revenue earning facilities there. And then definitely, you know, I want to continue the series and continue to publish books, and then, you know, be more available to go into classrooms and reach students in that capacity of exposing them to various careers, STEM careers.
Okay, cool. And then, man, we don't need to talk about money, but like, give me your best sales pitch for somebody why they should come work at Fervo. Somebody has a job offer on the table. One is, option A is Chevron, making whatever amount of money. Option B is Fervo. Yeah. Like, give me the best pitch on why they should come work with the team at Fervo versus, you know, Chevron or whoever else.
I won't pit the two against each other. I will say that, you know, if you are someone who is passionate about changing the world, if you are someone who likes going fast, likes working in collaborative functions, figuring things out, and making things happen, then Fervo is definitely the place for you. There's so much opportunity for growth as well. You know, when we look at the version of ourselves a year ago, 2 years ago, it's completely different, right? I have individuals on my team that have grown to positions that I don't believe they would have believed they would be in, just based off their hard work, their dedication, and their ability to try, right? And so, you know, we're a company that's passionate about our employees. We take care of our employees, and we all can agree that we want the best outcome for everyone.
I'm with it. I was expecting, you know, the Suge Knight death row. You want to come make, you know, a lot of clean energy. You don't worry about, you know, polluting the earth, and
I may
come
have to
join
get you
Fervo.
on the marketing piece, man. You seem to be a very creative individual.
Hey,
so.
man, look, hit me up. I got a couple ideas for you. But no, man, great talking to you, man. I really appreciate you coming through. You're welcome back anytime, for sure. And I really encourage you all who are watching this to go out there. Number one, support this book. It's very much needed. I mean, like I said, I got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, two handsome little black boys, and I think it's very important for them and all kids, you know, even from all backgrounds, to kind of see different examples, different representations of success and people that are pursuing their dreams and their goals. And there's a lot of stories that need to be told. And that's honestly why I started the podcast. So I think it's even better to start at an early age. So I highly encourage people to check this out at likemebook.com. I'm going to definitely get my copy autographed while you're here.
I got you.
Definitely will do that. And then, you know, go check out Fervo Energy and Quinn Woodard on LinkedIn. What's the best way for people to find you?
LinkedIn, definitely. And then there's also info attachment on the website, likemebook.com. So.
Okay. Slide in the DMs if you're looking for a job. Quinn got you. So that's it for this episode of the Custom Journeys podcast. I always forget to tell you guys to subscribe at the beginning, but I always remember at the end. So make sure you subscribe. Do me a favor. I appreciate it. But that's another great episode, and I'll see you all next week. Stay tuned. Peace.